Okay, so welcome to, I guess, day 3, but the second lesson is now on the website, and this is the first slide. There's 2 pie charts, 2 statistics, one that says non-industry studies, the other one that says industry studies. How many of you want to, who can explain to me what you think this means? Non-industry and industry, yeah.
So like the non-industries are the ones that only the companies individually do by themselves, and the industry ones that are like funded or like got some help, like any kind of help from the industries, like the companies that support.
Okay, so the top question was radio frequency research, does funding matter? So the key word here is funding. Who pays? Who's giving the money? And there's 2 types. One is non-industry types, and there's industry types. As Jay said, if it's industry research, that means it was funded by who?
The industry.
So what is the industry? Which industry are we talking about right now?
Like cell phone.
Cell phone companies, manufacturers.
And like Apple and.
Is there like a specific cell phone?
I'm sorry?
Is there like a specific cell phone?
It can be one company to do research on their own product. But there's also associations, a big organization that lobbies for the tech industry or the telecommunications industry to be exact. So let's say you have Sprint, Verizon, and T-Mobile in the US, right? Or something like that. These are carriers. So if you need to get a cell phone, then you have to go to one of those carriers and say, hey, I want a number, right? So they give it to you. But also the cell phone companies who make the cell phones, they want to do research too. So they all pool their money together and they form one big organization that will do the research on their behalf. Now, these organizations, the most famous one is CTIA, is a very, very famous lobby group, or they probably don't say it's a lobby group. They think it's a research institution, organization, but they are for the industry. Why? Because who's paying their paycheck? The industry. The industry is paying their paycheck. So do you think the CTIA is likely to be negative or like say the bad things about the industry or the companies? No, it's unlikely for that to happen. We know that automatically right off the bat. Now that's fine, I guess, in that the companies paid for it. They collected the money and they said, hey, let's establish an organization, and then this organization will be helping us in making sure that the governments and everybody else feels that this is safe to use. Now, if an organization, if there's a separate organization just devoted on helping the industry, is that going to give you unbiased, just straight facts? Or do you think there's somewhat of a tweak?
Somewhat of a change. Yes. There has to be.
There has to be. And that's a fair assumption. Now they're not gonna say that. They're not gonna be like, yo, we changed the numbers to fit our need. Nobody's gonna say that. But it's implied. It's implied. So for you to think, oh, CTIA is super cool, they're super, transparent, and they will tell us the truth and they'll be fair. That's what they're gonna say, but for you to assume that, that's not so good. Does that make sense? So you always have to have that critical thinking in there. Okay, these are funded by who? Who pays their paycheck? Okay, then they're not going to be saying mean things about them. Or it's less likely for them to say mean things about the industry. Just keep that in mind. So this chart is telling you that. Industry studies showed that roughly 70%, 68% had no effect. No health risks, no adverse health effects. Why? Because the industry funded it. If it's a non-industry funded study, then it's flipped. The harmful effects is 70% and the rest 30 is saying no effect. And you put them together and say, then the scientists will say it's 50-50. We don't know, it's 50-50. It is 50-50. If you put them together, it's 50-50. But if you divide them into who pays them, who pays for this research, then the result differs. This is important to understand. So who's paying for this research? And how committed are they in finding out the truth? Or how committed are they in making sure the companies don't look bad? Does that make sense? It's very important for you to understand this distinction. That was creepy. Cool, don't worry about it. So this particular slide
Then,
came
like,
from.
how can our side use that to help our side?
Well, you want to understand both sides. So there, and it's gonna show up later in the slides, but you have a clear stance. You think on the pro side we should promote it. Why? Because they're relatively, the health risks aren't to be concerned about. We shouldn't be concerned about the health risk. Why? Because we have a lot of studies to tell us there's nothing to worry about. Equally, the other side will say, yeah, we have other studies to tell us that it's not so safe, or there is a concern, and we should take that seriously. So it's really ultimately going down into what is the scientific consensus. Scientific consensus. Consensus means everybody's in agreement, or at least there's enough agreement within the scientific community. Now, if you look at this, they're going to say the scientific community has a 50-50 split. But in reality, it's slightly different just to say it's a 50-50 split. Why? Because who's paying for that research actually has an effect, or it has shown, depending on who pays, the results will differ. An interesting piece of information I thought when I first saw it. And this slide comes from the second link that I gave you on the first lesson.